to you. Just to show you this, Paul Hayward's column in The Observer. We're going to turn to Paul. Tevez affair takes hammer to love, trust and loyalty. Something you're worried about, obviously.
It just struck me that an interesting part of the whole saga was that fans just from all clubs just descended on Tevez straight away, you know, within seconds really, mainly through social media. And it strikes me that the modern fan living in a very difficult economic climate has a kind of love-hate relationship with the modern sort of superstar footballer. You know, they give them love and adoration, but the minute if they step out of line in a serious way, then they really get it. You know, because there's a sort of pent-up resentment towards footballers, and they're expected to be, you know, to follow certain rules.
Is that money-driven, do you think, mainly?
Yeah, it's partly envy, obviously, but I think what it says to you is that the modern fan resents a lot about the modern game, particularly Premier League football. You know, ticket prices, the way they're treated with kick-off times, the general change in the climate and the way that supporters are treated. So I think it struck me that it was interesting when Tevez did this, the whole country just came down on his back straight away. And I also think that in the end, supporters want to be able to trust players. You know, they want to be able to believe that the player is there with
they want to believe that the player loves the club.
There's some sort of devotion there, yeah,
and
professionalism.
I think most fans probably accept that players will leave and move on, but you at least have to have a degree of believing they do share this with us a little bit, don't they? You have to suspend disbelief. You know it's a business, and with Carlos Tevez, he's the most business-minded player ever because his economic rights were owned prior to joining City, so he was moved from club to club to make money. But you at least want to suspend disbelief for a couple of hours on Saturday afternoon and go, we're all in this together and we all share it. And when that's broken, and wow, isn't it broken, so time and time again, there's just this kind of anger, because if you, of course, if you're a fan, you don't change, you can't change, it's your whole life, and clearly for players it isn't, and most players are pretty candid about that, aren't they?
They are, and I think that where I have sympathy with the players in this whole thing about player power and there's no loyalty, and actually it's something that Michael Owen, who I know, you know, Paul knows very well, has talked about a lot on Twitter, is the idea that it's a one-way street. You know, okay, so I think in the media generally and fans expect the players to be loyal, and you know, would like them to be one club players and all that kind of thing, but we don't take any account of the fact that a club will sell them like that. You know, a club will move them on. They often don't get any loyalty from the club. So why do they have to? You know, why do they have to be the ones who are showing loyalty when they don't get any back? I mean, I think to a lot of them, and I totally understand this, although it's difficult for us as fans or journalists to get our heads around, it's a job. You know, it's a job like our job is a job.
Well, do you think Carlos Tevez has ever loved playing for Manchester City?
Not. I mean, I hope that he loves football, but not particularly playing for Manchester City, I doubt, no.
You know, even, I mean, in May, he was the captain when they won the FA Cup. There the pictures of him were, holding the trophy aloft. Have we really come to a stage where he's doing that as captain when he...
I think at that moment...
Doesn't really give a damn about the club.
I think at that moment he probably feels it, because it'd be difficult not to feel something quite special, and you know, there's that sort of old saying that team spirit is an illusion created in the aftermath of victory, isn't it? And probably club feeling is an illusion created in the aftermath of great victories. So I think they probably do feel it in that moment, but then a few days later he wasn't on the victory parade, was he? So once you get home and you go, well, you know, fine, what am I doing this summer? Where am I moving to? You know,
Mancini after the final was talking about his future. He didn't know whether he'd be here next season.
So, but surely you'd hope that they love, as Ollie says, love playing football, love scoring great goals. Obviously, you love the adulation from passionate fans. Man City are amongst the best fans, so you're going to love those moments. But probably the minute you get out of the ground and go home, you're on to your representative saying, right, so when am I going?
Isn't that a sad development that we've reached that stage or not?
It is, yeah. I mean, you see
or
this.
Should we accept it, or should I accept it as just part of modern football?
Well, no, not really. I mean, you see this at Arsenal as well. I think part of the grumpiness of Arsenal fans is about that they feel they're looking at certain players who basically aren't turning up properly, you know, aren't applying themselves, and they're just going through the motions, and that they've sort of they lack fighting spirit, they lack a winning mentality, and you can feel that all around the Emirates, can't you? That's part of the frustration of those supporters, I think. But with going back to City, I mean, I drew this contrast between Bellamy and Mancini. Now, Bellamy was mishandled by Mancini, and that's been one of his mistakes. He should have let Bellamy train in the way that he wanted to, and Bellamy would have delivered for him. He was committed to playing for Manchester City because he knew it was a good opportunity. Mancini mishandled that, Bellamy left the club, and he's now doing that at Liverpool. So you get a player like that who is committed to the team he's playing for. He may move around a lot, but when he arrives, he cares, you know. And I think supporters are drawn to that type of player. And it's why when you speak to Premier League managers, they all talk about character more and more now. You know, what's he like? You know, can I trust him? Is he going to, you know, is he stable? Is he going to play for me? Is he going to work for me? Or is he just passing through?
Well, I mean, Van Persie this week, I'm not going to talk about a new contract until I see which players Arsenal are going to sign in January. So he's basically saying, well, if I don't fancy the players, I'm going to go.
But it is a two-way street because, Torres leaving Liverpool, I know the new owners had come in afterwards, but I understand. Everyone understands why Liverpool fans were so upset with Torres leaving, because he had made very strong sort of allusions to how much he loved the club and the city. But if the club is consistently badly run, as it clearly was with the previous owners for 2 or 3 years, then do you ask a player in the best years of his career to say, well, actually, you've now got to stay here because you said a year ago that you loved the club? I mean, no one in any other walk of life would say, well, I'm at the top of my profession, but this company's really badly run, therefore I've got to stay. So, I mean, we do understand why players do that. I think you made a point earlier in the week, Ollie, it depends kind of what they say. They have to be careful what they say about loving the club and how they're there, because if they make very strong professions of loyalty and loving the club, and then it's clearly going to be much harder when they leave the club, which most of them inevitably will. I mean, very few people stay.
No,
I think that's a very good point that Rob made. I think somebody like, for instance, I think Darren Bent is supposed to be a lovely guy, but when he was at Sunderland, the general tenor of what he said was that he had finally found home. He'd found a place where, you know, not just a club, but an area where he was, you know, where he felt appreciated and loved and where he wanted to stay. So it came as a massive kick in the teeth when suddenly, you know, he's moving to Aston Villa.
And kissing Aston Villa's badge.
Yeah, and you know, I totally understand why fans, in that kind of instance, why fans are upset. I also understand why fans get upset when a player moves. Like, you know, I don't agree with the abuse that he got, absolutely not. But I understand why some Spurs fans are upset when Sol Campbell, who was their captain and their hero and you know, had been there since the start, moved to Arsenal. I think there are ways of doing it. I agree with Michael Owen 100% when he says that, you know, you have to cut the players some slack, and that at the end of it all, it is a job for them. I understand that and I agree with it. But I think within that, there are some things in football, some traditions and some parts of the culture that footballers should give respect to.
Did you agree with Steve Bruce? You know, we're talking about Darren Bent there, the Sunderland manager, who said this week, or I think it was on Saturday, that players are losing sight of their roots and also losing the fans with their behaviour. This was off the back of Titus Bramble and more personal problems, which obviously we're not going to go into, but it just triggered Bruce's feelings.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true, and I think some players have become infantilised. You know, when Alec Ferguson said a couple of years ago that that the modern player is very cocooned, I think that's really evident, isn't it? You know, agents, families, you know, sometimes PR advisors.
Clubs too. I mean,
and clubs.
You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
Sir
Sir Alex Ferguson is in a way, it's a little bit rich coming from him, given the lack of media opportunity. You know, he doesn't allow the players to talk to the press. I mean, it's kind of, you know, that's not exactly giving them a responsibility, is it?
But it doesn't make you a stronger person talking to the press necessarily. But then what I'm talking about is you know, character in the team, character on the pitch, and if you give people in sport, when they make millions and millions of pounds, places to hide all the time and excuses to make, then that's going to be reflected in the results.
Is it going to get worse, if worse is the right word, this sort of player power and the relationship between fan and player as well?
Well, we're going to talk about Steve Keane a bit later, I know, but I believe that the authority of the manager is the crucial thing in a football club, and the manager has to be able to control the players, and the club has to back the manager. Otherwise, the players run the show.
Well, hence Mancini.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And Mancini has strengthened his authority this week, I hope.
Yeah, by coming out and saying that after the
by
game.
saying he'll never play for the club again.
Yeah.
I think there is a degree where it's going to get worse because of the economic times we're in, because clearly footballers, players keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and less and people are struggling, and it's harder and harder. And similarly with bankers, they're in that stratosphere of sort of these enormous salaries, and people feel therefore they're an easy target, and that's why they're not going to get any sympathy. I mean, I think that it is a job for them. They do deserve to be seen in that light, but no, they're not going to get sympathy, because it is assumed in our society that if you earn a certain amount of money, therefore you're a fair target, and you can't. So I think the breakdown in relationship will.
Whatever
will
happens to Tevez in the next 3 months, he will get his £200,000 a week.
Absolutely,
know, even though he broke his contract.
And his signing-on fee when he moves club.
I mean, if your sports editor boss said to you, "We'd like you to go and such," you said no. I'm not doing that. There would be huge, reaction to that.
I think I might have done that. No, but in the end, I think it's a weird fact, but both sides are going to win from this. City will finally get rid of Tevez with his, with his restlessness and his introspection and all the rest of it. And Tevez will get a better deal down the road, and it will be his last, by the way, because he's 27. He'll have no resale value after that. So he really is aiming for his last big deal here.
In terms of what Steve Bruce said about players losing touch with their roots, isn't that inevitable? I mean, a lot of players, vast majority of players come from football players in this country come from working class backgrounds.
Yeah.
They're being paid vast sums of money, and that's not their fault. That's because that's the they're getting what the market rate is. It's inevitable that they're going to be, they're going to either move away or be moved away from their roots, from their communities. That's inevitable. And I think, I'm not saying they deserve sympathy, not at all, but I just think that a wider understanding of some of the issues that they face is rather than just saying player power is a bad thing and these players exist behind tinted windows. There has to be a slightly wider understanding of what's happening here, the kind of social issues that are happening.
It's just struck me that quite often we say, when they're hanging around with their old mates from school, we say, he needs to move away from his old mates from school. And when they move away from their old mates from school, we say, lost touch with reality.
Yeah.
And that happened a long time ago. It's not a recent phenomenon, is it, of the last few years? I mean, they've been being paid sort of millions of pounds a year for the last 10, 15 years, and even before that. So.
It's something the fans still can't comprehend, though, as far, if you get a bad performance, they believe that players sometimes don't try. The England situation, which we're going to discuss, that's a huge bugbear.
But of course it is the loyalty, it's the loyalty and passion of fans. It's that kind of undying loyalty that demands that they stay at one club, or among some fans, that pays the wages, isn't it? It's that kind of passion that fuels the market, that pays for the TV subscriptions, that pays for the season tickets, which means they get paid £1 million, £2, £3, £4, £5 million a year.
Interesting. Okay, let's switch from player power to fan power. And